edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinox Television, we talk about the upcoming municipal legislative elections, where the administrative bench of the Supreme Court has said that the examination of petitions filed in by some disgruntled political parties ahead of the country's municipal elections would only begin 1 week from today. And also in this newscast, youths in the economic capital Douala are saying that they want to be fully involved in the decision-making process of the country. This as Cameroon joins the global community to commemorate the International Youth Day. And also in this newscast, we visit a locality in Chang in the west region of Cameroon where 4 children died of food poisoning. These are headlines, details and more just in a moment. Thank you once again, viewers, for joining us in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinox Television, and welcome back from the weekend. We begin right away in politics. The Supreme Court sitting in for the Constitutional Council shall tomorrow examine the petitions submitted by the political parties and candidates whose nomination papers for the upcoming June elections were rejected by ELECAM. A sincere apologies for that mix-up there. We were announcing the Supreme Court sitting in for the Constitutional Council that shall tomorrow examine petitions submitted by political parties whose list of nominated candidates were rejected by Elections Cameroon. The court, according to some political observers, did not respect the 5 days deadline of the Electoral Code. Roland Akong tells us more from Yaoundé. We surely shall be coming back to that report in our subsequent newscast. And just to add that officials of the administrative bench of the Supreme Court have announced that deliberations on the submitted petitions by grumbling political parties in the country would only begin next Monday. That is precisely for the municipal elections bid for the 30th of September 2013. Examination of over 250 files, which was expected to begin sometime this week, was postponed to August 19th as they needed more time to begin the process. That is what the officials of the said administrative bench of the Supreme Court are saying. The Vice President of the Supreme Court, Justice Clement Atangana, on behalf of the President of the Supreme Court, said 5 days is insufficient to go through the 260 files that were submitted by the various political parties vying for posts in the upcoming municipal elections. Some party officials have termed it as a violation of the country's electoral code. We surely shall be coming back to that in our subsequent newscast. Meantime, some youth leaders here in the economic capital Douala have said they are foreseeing a bleak future for many youths in Cameroon today if the Cameroonian government does not hasten in the creation of employment opportunities. They underscored the need for more youths to be involved in the decision-making process. That is how we announced in the headlines. For Hansen Chanji tells us that they were speaking in the economic capital Douala today on the sidelines of the International Youth Day.
Commemorating this 14th edition of International Day for the Youth in Cameroon, to some youth is not necessary because much talk is done and less action taken. Some of the youth we met in the economic capital, Douala, frowned at the fact that they have been abandoned in the geopolitical and socio-economic contribution in Cameroon's development.
The youth was supposed to be the future of tomorrow, but the way the country is, the thing isn't vice versa. So nothing is going to concern the youth. The youth need to work extra hard to make out of living.
Lack of education, unemployment, poverty, and effective participation of youth in society and decision-making.
They need job opportunity. They are suffering too much, especially me. I'm a mother already. I'm still going to school. I'm struggling to send my child to school. I'm struggling to send my own self.
This youth leader in Douala says the situation has led to a massive rural-urban migration, and even migration out of the country for greener pasture. Some of these youth said in the face of all this, their future promises to remain bleak.
Because I'm thinking, even the way I'm managing today, I don't know what my child will do tomorrow.
Keeping aside your document, keeping aside the education that you have gotten, it's not easy for you to get an employment in Cameroon.
Is their future really bleak?
I cannot say that is too bright, but I can say that the light is up there. They are not obliged to travel, but we have the responsibility to encourage them. Don't migrate.
As Cameroonian youth joined their counterpart well over to commemorate the 14th edition of International Youth Day on the theme Youth and Migration, some of them think that they have been abandoned in the domain of national integration, as they all seem to have sat on their destinies.
Mixed feelings there by some youths that our reporters spoke to here in the economic capital Douala on the sidelines of the International Youth Day commemorated today. And also a journalist working with a private print media here in the economic capital Douala was severely beaten by a policeman in Bonaberry. That was at the weekend. Vivian Tomfak said he was investigating an alleged child trafficking when the police inspector at the Douala 5 district got him trashed. For Hansen tells us more once again.
Vivian Tomfak, a reporter with La Nouvelle Expression, explains to us that he was beaten by police inspector at the Douala 5 district police station. He said he was on assignment to investigate the alleged arrest of a lady who is said to have been involved in human trafficking. Upon arrival, he met the said police inspector and tried to find out if actually they have arrested the lady in question, but he was told that his presence was not needed. Tonfak insisted, and within a second, this officer transformed him into a punching bag. He then ran for his dear life. He says his life was further threatened when he took on a 2 kilometers non-stop marathon, passing by the Tikolo market, where market sellers thought he was a thief. After running for several minutes, he returned to base, looking battered, worn out, and frustrated. It was as if he was engaged in the Mount Cameroon Race of Hope with his shoes totally destroyed, and he calls this an abomination.
Là, c'est une abomination.
A situation that has left members of the trade unions of Cameroon journalists indifferent, that has not left them indifferent. Rather, some told our reporters in the economic capital Douala today that they are bracing up to file a petition to the hierarchy of the set against the set officer so that he could be punished. They described the situation as a total violation and said that it is simply coming to add up to other similar cases faced by media practitioners in the process of the exercising of their duties. And just to add that officials of the 5 police district did not, or they failed to make a comment on the situation. As we announced as well in the headlines, 4 children of the same family who died of food poisoning in the Foke Mazo village that is in Chang in the west region of Cameroon have finally been laid to rest. The children, who range from 18 years old to 16 months, are said to have consumed a traditional substance prepared by their grandmother on the occasion of the arrival of some newborn babies of that particular family. Investigations have been opened, as we see in the following report. The crow of the cock this morning in the village of Fokamezo, some 10 kilometers from the town of Chang, was announcing the dawn of an unexpected grief in this locality. Patches of crowd could be perceived from a distance, and a majority in an inconsolable state. Tragedy befell the Tegomo Abraham family after 4 children were confirmed dead as a result of food poisoning. This relative recounts a story of how it was during the welcoming of newborn babies of the said family the previous day that a substance he called melang was mixed for consumption as tradition demands. He explains that the said substance, which is reported to have claimed the lives of the 4 children, is eatable. He is yet to understand how and why it killed the innocent children, he explains. The remaining family members who tasted the traditional concoction were immediately taken to the hospital for checkup. The grandmother of the deceased children, who reportedly prepared the alleged poisonous substance alongside a soothsayer, were immediately taken to a local brigade for questioning. And on that note, we come to the end of this segment of the news. Up next, we meet our guests. Tonight, we talk about the International Youth Day, the 14th of its kind. Our guests tonight, we have two guests actually. One from the Delegation of Youth and Civic Education. Good evening to you, Chief Ayuk Eyong, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, good evening.
And to you, Mr. Njebe Ondi, you are a member of the African Youth Union. We thank you so much as well for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Good evening to you. Good evening to your viewers.
We thank you as well for coming. We begin right away with the theme of this year's edition of the International Youth Day. As I earlier indicated, it is the 14th edition, which is talking about youths and migration. What, according to you, is the meaning, or what, according to you, is the reason for the choice of this theme, youth and migration?
The first observation I'll make is that the African youth, I'll talk because I'm an African, I don't think that African youths were consulted, before coming up with such a theme. Before you come up with such a theme, I think that it will be very normal that you consult the people, the young people, and find out what their problems are. And then, secondly, I would say for 500 years, the white man has drained Africa of our young people. Now they're talking about immigration. It's so unheard of. And when you talk about, immigration, talking about the World Youth Day, you're talking about immigration as if we're just an affair of, the African youth. I want to say that Francois Hollande signed an accord with Canada to the effect that Canada was supposed to employ 10,000 French youths. So talking about immigration, it's not just a youth affair, because this thing is stigmatized and it appears like it's just a youth affair. So those are my very first observations.
And according to you, is the theme actually called for, Mr. Ayuk Eyong?
Yeah, I want to say that the theme comes at a period whereby you see migration is one of the main societal problems, and you realize that you see the youth actually compose one of the highest percentage as far as this concept of migration is concerned. And I believe that the stakeholders were not foolish enough to bring up this theme. I think that comes up at the right time.
But many observers are thinking that it is as a result of the lack of an effective policy to maybe account an effective policy in favor of Cameroonian youths that we see many youths going out of the country. So what could be the essential, the essence of this theme as it is called youth and migration?
Yeah, I want to say something. You see, there are erroneous misconceptions which people actually tend to, propagate around when it comes to this concept of youth and migration, and perhaps empowerment of youth in Cameroon. And I would not like to, sing praises to the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Civic Education, which I actually represent here. You see, the government has been putting a lot of things in place to see into it that youth should stay and, we together develop our country. Now, let me just take, for example, just of recent, there was a creation of, more than 300 multipurpose youth centers, which most of these centers are well equipped. You know of the Paget Youth Program, which is on air. You know of PIACI. Now you know of PIFMAS. You know the National Civic Agency Development Program. These are all programs that are put in place to see how youth of Cameroon can better off their lifestyle.
Of course, these projects have been put in place. Precisely, equally brings to mind the National Youth Council that was created in 2007 to seek ways that was drafted to see how the voices of the youths could be voiced and their plight addressed. According to you, Mr. Njebe, what could be your assessment of the said National Youth Council that was created over 5 years ago?
I think that the creation of this National Youth Council was just kind of cosmetic political gesture, to diffuse the political tension, as it were, before the 2011 presidential election. Talking about the National Youth Council, it is clear that this thing has never existed. It even died before it was created. Number one.
What do you mean by that before it was created?
You can verify that from some cases that we've seen in this country recently relating directly to the young people. Vanessa Chachwa is one of the incidents where I thought that the National Youth Council is supposed to come out, and ask the government what is happening about this case, dialogue with the government. We saw this lady helpless alone. You also have the case of the confrontation, with the Dido youth and the Bensikers. That's one case. So we have cases like that. Recently, even you had the case of the president who was found wanting, and then the government covered the gentleman. And I want to say that, talking about the National Youth Council, this institution has no elections. It has no legitimacy. Since the mandate of the president was supposed to be just 3 years, I don't think that after 3 years, he has renewed his mandate. It has no finances. It has no structures, no offices anywhere, no general assemblies, no accountability, no elections, nothing. So I want to say that it speaks for itself that this institution is dead.
Some of these organs, Mr. Chief Ayok Eyong, that was created maybe to better the condition of youth. You named a couple of them, the PRC and the rest. According to you, is it helping better the condition of youth in Cameroon today?
Yes, thank you, Mimi, for giving me the floor again. I want to say that these programs, which you have just stated, are authentic. The PAGEU, the PRC, we have the National Civic Agency Development. These are authentic programs. And you see, many youths here in Douala have developed from this. They have actually achieved a lot of things from this program. Coming to things like PAGEU, I want to say that's not something that I should stand over the air to sing a song. Many youth in Douala 1, Douala 2, Douala 3 have benefited from this.
If that is the case, why is the problem of unemployment in Cameroon not changing?
Yeah, thank you. You see, there's this thing that I want to correct you. Don't ask what the country has done for you. Ask what you have done for your country. You understand? We should use the minimal resources that we have in place to see how we can develop our country. That's what I think that we should do. You see, but the problem with most youth today, what do they want? They want green-collar jobs. How many of them are involved in the informal sector? Everybody wants to write ENAM, everybody wants to write ENS, everybody, you see? But if you go to other countries, youth are involved in the informal sector.
Mr. Njibe, when we followed some of the roundtable conferences that took place here in the economic capital Douala, one of the principal issues that were raised was unemployment, like we earlier talked about. Can we blame this, as he is indicating, on the youths, on the Cameroonian youths?
I want to say that to be able to face unemployment, we need statistics as to the exact situation of unemployment. In this country, in 2005, where the population census was organized, it took about 9 billion francs. The government had to be forced after 5 years to publish the census. And according to the census, they will tell you that Douala, the whole of Douala, is just 2 million. I want to say that, talking about the 25,000 jobs that the president promised the Cameroonian youth.
The jobs that were actually created, not promised.
In the civil service, in Douala alone, 52 young people deposited, demand for those jobs. In Ebolowa, 6,000 people. I'm going by these figures because I don't have any figures to rely on. You see, so there is a very serious problem. And some of these people who got in, I want to tell you that 5,000 of them, had to drop everything. They had to abandon the jobs because they saw the very harsh terms that the government proposed to them after they were retained. And just to tell you that, as it stands, some of them went, sent from the south as far as the north, with their families, young couples, sent as far as the north without any salary. And for years, these people had been, they had been wanting around without any salary. I recently, the government sent out some trainees, that's some young men who graduated from the police. I want to tell you that, as it stands now, some of them are earning salary and they're having no work. They're doing no work because the government has refused, to get them to work. So you see that this situation is a very complex situation. I'm talking about the PAGEU and all of those programs. I want to say that it's so disheartening that it is the government should be talking about these projects. We are not seeing these projects on the ground. We are not seeing a follow-up of what is being put into this project. How much does this thing cost? How much is it that is in each of these projects? What is the bilan year after year? We are not seeing this accountability. It is not transparent. It is not open. Communication is not done around this thing. Just to tell you that the government functions in this way, that they have money, they swindle the money, and they make sure that there's opacity as much as possible, so that the corruption prospers in the process. So I need him to give us figures. Let him tell us that, okay, this is PAGEU. This is when it started, this year. You know, from this year to this year, for this month, this is what we were able to do. These were their objectives. This is what they were able to do. You know, the following year, this is what we were able to do. Each of these programs. It is not enough to multiply names here. You know, jaw-breaking names, and that you think that the situation is going to change. We know the government. We know how they always function, and this is how they are, they're approaching the issue.
Mr. Ayok Eyong, looking at some of these problems that Mr. Njebel-Ndi has so far highlighted, could we not say that it is contributing immensely to the high rate of immigration of Cameroonian youths today?
Yeah,
we are going down to the theme.
Yeah, going down to the theme, I want to say something like what he said. I want to correct him on something. He said youth who are transferred to the north, there are people who are transferred to the south. You see, there's this concept that, you see, if we're actually looking at the theme, we should look at youth migration, we should look at civic responsibility, and we should look at national integration. You understand? Now, if we look at those aspects, we realize that whether you are transferred in the north, whether you are transferred in the south, you are a Cameroonian. And those are things that we should propagate. You see now? Now, coming to the issue of unemployment in Cameroon, now, I want to say which has actually contributed to migration. Now, we are not actually like saying that migration is bad. You understand? Now, what do we mean by migration? Migration is the movement from one place to another. Now, take example the case of Cameroonians who migrate abroad and they remain abroad. What we are trying to propagate is that those people, when they migrate, they should come back and see how we can contribute to the development of the country.
But is that the situation that we see? We see some of them, they
migrate
go out
remain.
They remain, and what's the impact?
You see, there is brain drain. There's the absence of the working population.
So
that's why this team came up, youth and migration, so that we should be able to sensitize the youth on the impact of migration, the effects of migration, and together we see how we can better the situation of Cameroon.
Deducing from this theme, how could it help solve the problem of clandestine immigration that you are indicating?
Yeah, from this theme, I believe that, for example, today we had something like a forum whereby youths were sensitized. Through this theme, if youths are supposed to be sensitized, they witness the effects, that's mostly the negative effects of this migration, like what you still say, clandestine migration, should be brought up so that through there, youths will realize that, you see, to make it in life is not necessarily traveling abroad. And if traveling abroad, we should respect the legal method. But most of us today, they travel through the illegal way, which you know.
Back to you, Mr. Njebel-Ndi, as a member of the African Youth Union. Many youths here in the economic capital, Douala, were talking about the need for youths to be integrated in the decision-making process of Cameroon. What could be your evaluation of the situation so far?
Okay, talking about the decision-making process, that's just one problem. I want to say that the young man in Cameroon has got political, economic, social problems, financial, you can name it. There are so many of them, you can name these problems. Now, I think that we should not talk about the symptoms of the problem, we should talk about the cause of the problem. The cause is that the people are not organized, the young people are not organized. They are not structured enough so that they are powerful enough to hold governing authorities to accountable leadership when it comes to issues relating to the youth. This is what the youth should look for.
So you are blaming the youth somehow?
The youth should take responsibility. The youth should take leadership. The youth should take leadership. Let them constitute a national youth council that is what they sought. And if they constitute a national youth council that is what they sought, the unemployment problem will be solved, you know, and all other problems will be solved because they would now be able, as a political identity, to communicate this government across these problems across the government. So you cannot go and you just want to handle one problem, you know, and you know there are so many of these problems, and that it's all about handling the problem from the cause. And to talk about the Cameroonians who migrate, it's not a bad thing to migrate, like he said. But we find a situation where, you know, mad people from China, for example, prostitutes from China, you know, they have a free way into Cameroon. They don't need a visa. The Cameroonians need a visa to go that way. I just gave you an example of how Francois Hollande negotiated to ensure that his people, you know, cross over 10,000 French youth cross over to Canada with jobs. It depends on the accord that governments negotiate. It's very important. I'm talking about national integration. Sir, if you have to put national integration on the balance and the stability of families, I think that the stability of families is very important because that is the brick on which national integration is built. I want to tell you about the situation of a man who left the Northwest and went up to the North, left his wife without money because he had to pay. He was compelled, you know, to be going after women there. He picked HIV, came back, contaminated his wife, and both of them died.
Because he's not employed, he is supposed to go out of the normal or carry out some immoral practices.
I am saying that the ministry that is in charge of the family must understand that couples, especially young couples, are likely to be fragile, and that it is in the interest of government to establish a policy vis-a-vis family, that families must stay together, and that not even employment should separate families.
They are talking about the problems of families. We are talking about the International Youth Day. As he earlier indicated, Mr. Ayok Eyong, let's come back to the place of the youths as far as the development of Cameroon is concerned. What could be your own point of view as far as the role of the youths in the society is concerned? What could be your evaluation as well?
Yeah, thank you. I want to say that, first of all, you see, the youth should act as torch bearers. They should act as flag bearers as far as all activities in society is concerned. Now, as concerned our country is concerned, there's a question of what we call the junior parliamentarians, you see, whereby they are even involved in policies making. You understand? There's a question of, like what he said, the Cameroon National Youth Council. You see, many of them are involved in these policies. And when he just said of recent that elections are not held, that's an overstatement. Elections are being held. Last about 2010, elections were held in the Cameroon National Youth Council. And we are preparing now for elections again with the Cameroon National Youth Council. Elections are held at the level of the subdivision, elections are held at the level of the division, and elections are even held at the level of the province, but today regional, at the regional level. Elections are held.
We take the Cameroonian
So do
youth
you
as
think that
witnesses.
the problem of brain drain could be solved anytime soon in Cameroon?
Well, it depends on government, and it depends on elections, because the people have to decide, you know, the candidates that have the right political programs for them. So it depends on free and fair elections.
Thank you so much, Mr. Njebeondi, for joining us tonight. You are a member of the African Union. We thank you so much for joining us, the leader of the African Union, rather. We thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Thank you very much.
And to you, Mr. Ayok Eyong, you are a member or an official from the Delegation of Youth and Civic Education, the Littoral Regional Bureau. We thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point. To you viewers, we thank you for having joined us in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on ATV. We wish you a wonderful and a blessed stay in the company of our programs. Good evening to you once again. Thank you.